Hey everyone. I've been asked to explain how we go about trying to figure out what your progress is in ALEKS when you're on the Sugar Salem online, doing that work there in ALEKS. Not only determine what your progress is, what your grade might be at the moment, how many topics per week you're going to have to do to keep up and finish in time, all those kinds of things. There's 4 different questions I'm going to address here. And they all require a few numbers that you get right off of the ALEKS. The student can log in and they can get this information right off of their login. It's not very hard to acquire, but these are the numbers that you're going to need in order to do these calculations. So I'm going to do this as though I were figuring it for an individual student, and then you can apply the different numbers to the student that you're trying to help out. You're going to need the total topics in the whatever that they're studying. And I'm going to choose geometry as an example. Geometry has 524 total topics. So you'll need to figure out how many total topics there are in the course that you're trying to figure. So that's one thing you'll need to know. And it's not very hard to come by. It's usually right there on the front. You'll also need to know the number for the initial knowledge check. And let's say that this person we're talking about has 149 that they got. So they took their initial knowledge check right at the very, very beginning, and they were able to knock out 149 of these 524 topics. So you'll need that number. You'll need to know how many they've completed up to the moment that you want to figure something for them. So how many are completed now? And let's say that this person right here at this moment has 388 of the total 524 completed. 449 in their initial knowledge check, and then they've completed this many more to arrive at a total of 388. And you'll also need to know how many weeks for us this year. If you started in September with us on September 9th, then the total number of weeks is 34. It's also nice to know, and we'll see in just a few minutes, you're going to need to know how many weeks are left to figure out what their progress is right at the moment. So let's say the question was, how many topics each week do I need to do from the beginning to keep up? How many each week? I guess I'll put topics up here too so you know what we're talking about. Each week to finish in time, I guess. Each week from the beginning. Very, very outset. This is a pretty easy calculation. All you got to do is take the total 524, subtract how many they knocked out with that first test, and divide it by 34. I always add one more so that rounding errors don't cause the person to be behind by 5 topics at the end. So I always just add one. And in this case, that turns out to be 12. So if this person from the outset did an average of 12 per week, they would finish in time. That would be the rate that they would have to complete things. Okay, here's another question that might be asked. How many topics each week do I have to do if I'm going to take where I am right now and finish? So I'm talking right now, and I'm talking, let's see, what's the date today? March 28th. And the end of the trimester, or the end of the semester is May 25th. So there are 7 weeks left, leaving the very last week, just in case there's some things that have to be cleaned up and finished up. And so there's 7 weeks left, leaving the last week not counted. So I've got 7 weeks. The last week is for just catching up and doing what you can. So if you want to know how many topics each week with what I have right now to finish from right now, you would have to take 524, the total, and subtract the 388 that have been completed that we saw over there in the list, and you would divide that by the 7 weeks that are left, add 1 for safety, and we get that this person's going to have to do 20 topics per week from here on out to finish on time. Now, it was 12 topics per week, but they got behind. If they were doing 12 topics per week, they would be up to 416 by now, and they're only at 388. And so they're going to have to play catch up. And so they've increased the number per week because they haven't caught up. They haven't stayed caught up until this point. It's still doable. They can still do 20 per week and catch up. And another question that might be asked is, how am I doing right now? I mean, am I grade-wise? How am I doing right now? This one's tough to do. What you'd have to do is you take 524, which is the total topics. This is how I figured that 416 that they should be at. So you take the 524 total topics and you multiply by the fraction, which is the number of weeks which have gone by, divided by the total number of weeks in the trimester. That's the fraction of the time that has been spent. So that fraction times the total 524 should be where they're at. And that, I'm going to just make a little note right here. That right there means the 27th week, which is where we are right at this moment. 27 out of the total 34 times 524 is 416. And so they should be at 416 if they're keeping up with this rate figured at the beginning, but that person isn't. They're only at 388. So now we take, to figure out how they're actually doing right now, we take one. I think I've got room here. We take 1 minus the deficiency, which is 416 minus 388 divided by the 416, because that's where they should be at. And we get a value of 93.26%, which is an A. Even though the person's behind by that far, they're not that far behind. And so right now they would have an A. That's an indicator of what percentage they have done based on what was expected at this point. So it's not bad. But here's the real clincher right here. When I give grades, in order to simplify things and be able to explain things to parents and to students, it comes right down to a very simple idea. How many topics do you have done out of how many that are required to get 100%? And that grade just goes up and up and up the more topics that they do. And so it's not a real indicator of where they are. This is where they are. This is an indicator of where they are. But if I were to give grades today, in other words, if this person were to stop at 388 and not do another topic, then on May 25th, when I assign grades, it's a very simple calculation. It's just the 388 divided by what they got done, divided by the 524, which is 100%. And that would be 74%, and that person would get a C for their grade because 74% translates to a C. So just so that you understand this right here, so that I didn't have to explain this to parents and try to figure things out, there would be a million questions, and they go, now what are you doing? Instead of that, I just decided to go with this simple calculation. And so for the midterm grades, some people are getting D's and F's, and they're actually keeping up. It's because they've got, they've still got about how many weeks? I don't know, 8, 9, 10 weeks left to get those other topics in order to get up to this point. And so their midterm grade is the grade that they get if I were giving grades for the final grade that they get. If I were giving it on that day that I did midterms, that would be the grade they have. That grade just keeps going up and up and up as this number right up here gets to be more and more and more topics. So it's two different ways to do it. This gives a better indicator of how the person's keeping up. But this is their actual grade at the moment, and that just continues to rise as they continue to do more and more and more topics. So I hope you understand the difference between the two. If you have any questions, you're welcome to contact me one way or another. My email address is tjohnson@sugarsalem.com. So if you got any questions about anything in particular, you want me to figure someone's individual grade because this is too weird and you don't know what's going on, please contact me. I hope this was helpful, and good luck.